This is my deathmatch count, 8000. When I was grinding to Radiant, I played 10 of these a day. I'm barely active now and my win rate is still above 60%. I'm going to show you exactly what I do in every single deathmatch I play, and just as important, the version of the routine you should be running at Gold or Plat or Ascendant. Because if you copy what I do at your rank, it actually doesn't work yet, and I'll explain why. I'm Daniel, I picked 800 Radiant, I played in the Valorant Challengers League, and I've coached over 100 students at this point. And the reason I can sit above 60% win rate in DMs while barely playing is not because I'm aiming better than the people I'm killing. It's because of how I play every deathmatch, which is something almost nobody is doing. So let me start with the two ways most people are wasting their time in DMs without realizing it. The main problem that people have when they play deathmatches is that they are not actually focusing on improving, and they're playing deathmatches to not feel bad and be able to say, well, I have played some DMs, so I'm good. Let me explain why this is completely wrong. By not focusing on anything particularly in the deathmatch, your improvement rate that could have been 80%, now by playing just for the sake of it, is gonna be around 20, for example. You can see how by playing this way you're literally working against yourself. You have to play double, triple the deathmatches to improve just as much as you would have if you focused and played with purpose each one of them. The second big issue that people face in their playstyle in deathmatches has two phases. The first one is the guy who plays full sound, who sits and waits for enemies to pick, who is scared of going and picking first, even shifting sometimes so that he can secure the kill. The second one is the guy who just randomly runs around, without properly clearing angles and holding anything, exposing himself to multiple angles at once. In the first case, you're playing the deathmatch badly because the fights that you're picking up are too easy. You rely too much on sound and kill enemies by the act of surprise, so the fights that you're picking up are often not fair. Another issue that you will face by playing this way is not picking up enough fights. By shifting and often waiting for the enemies to come to you instead of searching for fights, you will face less enemies, which at the end is counterproductive. In the second case, you are too reckless and rush in your fights. You do search for enemies, but you switch from picking and watching one position to another too fast and too randomly. This causes you to not being able to clear them up properly and not training your in-game mechanics as you could. Also causes you to die from the back more often, which makes you tilt more. Again, counterproductive. A playstyle that just makes you want to play less DMs that you're already playing. Before I show you the right way to play DMs, I want to give you one quote to remember from this video. If you have to flick, you have already made a mistake. The flick isn't the skill. The flick is what you have to fall back on when the rest of your game broke down. The actual skill is making sure that the flick was never necessary in the first place. The second point I want to talk to you guys is what is your goal in the deathmatch and what playstyle you should have for maximum performance. So now that we know what are the most common mistakes, let's go through how you want to play the deathmatch and how to be able to get the most out of it. The goal of the deathmatch is to pick up as many fights as you are ready for. Now, what does that mean exactly? It means that you need to be picking up and searching for a fight, basically just when you're ready for it, so that you're not just running around recklessly and getting constantly killed from the back. Most people think that deathmatch is a game mode where you just have to kill players. While this is true, what most people forget is that in the deathmatch your actual main goal is to train the whole game mechanics that there are. And the foremost of them is picking and clearing them up. By doing this one specific mechanic correctly, you're already going to be 95% ready for every fight that you're about to face. Why? Because your crosshair will be exactly at the position that you're exposing yourself to. So this means that there cannot be no shifting, no running around recklessly without properly checking positions, nothing of that. The reason why we want to get the most amount of fights is simple, just to get the better return of investment of our time. That's why I do not recommend to play team deathmatches, because there you're not able to pick up as many fights as you would in a deathmatch. Additionally, you're also not able to train your picking and map clearing of the maps that are in rank, since team deathmatch has its own map pool. One crucial detail that people miss is the existence of hot zones. Hot zones are specific positions on every map that allow you, by just standing in them, pick up a lot of fights because there are just more spawn around them. Also, these positions rely on the fact that they are not completely in open ground, so your back is most of the time protected because there is a wall behind you. Standing in these zones is super effective to get fights and improve your gunfight power. Although maintaining this position is super complex and requires the player to be really good at flicking, spraying, cross replacement, etc. So in your next deathmatch, try to play in one of these hot zones, the ones that I'm showing to you on the screen right now. Remember that sometimes holding the enemy who's about to pick you is good. Holding is also a skill, but do not be scared of picking and picking out fights. Last but not least, you need to focus on a specific mechanic in every deathmatch that you play. You need to play every deathmatch with a purpose, so that you actually can track progress and improve your return of investment of your time. And that's exactly what is my next point about, the different mechanics that you can train in a deathmatch and how to do it. First of all, let's start from one of the most important ones, which is crosshair placement. Crosshair placement means keeping your crosshair in a position where the enemy head will most likely appear. Mainly, it involves keeping it on the head level and keeping it off the wall. These two are at the top of Valorant in-game mechanics. The reason being is that they make your life as a player much easier. They allow you to get the kills without even aiming. Let me explain. Imagine these two scenarios. In the first one, the player is holding the angle with a bad crosshair placement. He's aiming too low and too close to the wall. When the enemy picks him, not only he will not be able to react in time, he will also need to micro-adjust, forcing him to lose time and rely on his raw aim. But his crosshair will also be too low, which means that he either will have to do a diagonal flick, which are harder, or just will shoot at the enemy's body. As you can understand, this situation is totally unfavorable for the player holding. In the second scenario, the player holding has a good crosshair placement. His crosshair is both on a good height and distance from the wall. Now, when the enemy picks, he won't even need to move his mouse. So focusing on these two things in your deathmatches is the key of playing better. If you pay attention to every map in the game, there are clues to the correct head level. Every box in Valorant is the same height as the player. If there are two boxes stacked up, the line in the middle is the level of the head. But there are also literal lines that allow you to understand the head level in certain situations. These clues are almost everywhere once you start looking for them. About keeping your crosshair off the wall is pretty straightforward. Just don't keep it on the wall or super close to it. Leave some pixels in the middle. But there are some rules that I'm gonna go over. If you expect the enemy to be running out, then hold wider. He's gonna appear faster. If you expect him to be shifting out, then hold closer. He's gonna appear slower, you have more time to react. If you're closer to an angle, hold wider. The enemy will occupy more pixels on your screen, so you need to leave more pixels between your crosshair and the corner you're holding. If you're holding a long-range corner, hold tighter. The enemy will occupy less pixels on your screen, so you have more time to react. Obviously, you don't always have to hold your crosshair off the wall, and that's exactly what is the next mechanic about. Quick reframe before we move on. Because I see this confuse people constantly. Crosshair placement is for when you're the defender. When you're holding the angle and the enemy is the one walking into your sights. That's half of every DM. The other half is when you are the guy moving. When you are the guy walking into the angle. And those two halves are completely different mechanics. If you only train one of them, you're going to be great at half of every fight that you take. So let me show you what I do when I'm the one picking. Because the goal is the exact same as crosshair placement, but the way you get there is totally different. It's about peeking and pre-aiming. Peeking is the action of isolating each fight. In Valorant, there are positions which are called common spots. These common spots is where usually players will call you from, for one specific reason. There is a cover, wall or corner nearby. By having a wall close to them, the enemy, after picking up the fight with you, will have the opportunity of going back safely without dying. This is why you always have to peek and pre-aim these common positions. 90-degree angles are also common spots. There is because the enemy is trying to catch you with the element of surprise. So these ones we are also going to be pre-aiming and peeking. But how do we do it correctly? To peek correctly, you need to combine pre-aiming and tracing, so keeping crosshair off the wall. Basically, the way you do this is this. Let's say that we want to pick B main on Ascendant as attackers. This position right here is obviously a common spot because there is a wall close to it. To pick it correctly, we will need to first get closer to it, and then just before we are about to expose ourselves, we are gonna be pre-aiming and picking the corner. Pre-aiming is gonna allow us to be completely prepared to shoot the enemy as we see him. The reason we have to trace the area before the common spot is because there might be an enemy there, playing in an off angle. Off angle is a position which we wouldn't expect. They are completely unsafe and leave no plan B to the enemy. Additionally, when peeking, we have to pay attention to angle advantage, which is how close we are to the wall in front of us. The closer you are, the harder it is to isolate each fight, and the earlier you're gonna expose yourself to the enemy. The further back you are, the better you're gonna be able to isolate fights and see the enemy as he sees you. Quick note before we move on. If you want me to actually watch your gameplay and tell you what's going wrong, that's what the Melee 6 Club is built around. You submit a ranked WOD, I review it live during one of our twice weekly sessions within 2 weeks, and you get the full recording and notes either way. If you're there live, you can hop on stage and it basically becomes a one-on-one while everyone else watches and learns. Link is in the description. Alright, back to it. I want to also talk to you about the other mechanics that you can train in the deathmatch, the burst and the spray. Starting from the burst, which is when you with the primary rifle shoot 2 to 3 bullets, and then let your gun recoil reset. This is a powerful technique because after you're done shooting, you're instantly able to move. This allows you to make yourself a much harder target to hit. Also, it allows you to reset your aim and aim at the enemy again if you have missed the first one. A still target is an easy target. A moving target is a hard target. Make yourself a hard one, especially if you're bursting and not spraying. What I see my students struggle with the most is burst control. Burst control is when you during the burst pull your mouse slightly down. You see, if you shoot your burst, your second and third bullet will already go slightly up. This, if you have a correct crosshair placement, is actually working against you, since If you don't hit the enemy with the first bullet, your second and third are gonna be higher than his head. Controlling your burst also allows you to later on control the recoil better, because you know at what point your recoil is. So if you start shooting again too fast and your recoil hasn't resetted yet, you will be able to control it easier. Spray control means having control over your spray. Spraying is actually a really useful technique that a lot of players in Valorant don't do enough. It's true that the spray pattern is somewhat random, even though not completely, because each spray is pretty similar to another one. This makes it harder to control, but not impossible. However, you should not always spray. There are just some situations where spray is actually better. First, in close range. Spraying in close range is a good option because it's easy to control, and since the target is bigger, it's also easier to hit. Obviously, you don't have to aim for the spray, but if you don't kill the enemy with the first bullets or the first shots, then committing the spray is a viable choice. The second is when you're in the close to medium range and you have hit the enemy in the body once with the second or first burst. When you hit an enemy in the body, he barely moves. This is gonna make him an easier target. When you definitely should not spray is in long range fights, because targets are smaller, so harder to hit, and the spray is much harder to control. And also when you're facing multiple enemies, mainly because when you are spraying you cannot move, so you're an easier target. You might kill the first guy, but the second guy is probably gonna trade you. Although if you found yourself in a scenario where you started spraying and then another player popped out, what you can do is spray transfer, which is when you, without stopping your spray, flick to the enemy and keep controlling your spray. The last point that I want to talk to you guys about is what gun you should be playing in a deathmatch. In my opinion, there are only 4 guns that one should actually play. The first and second one are either Phantom or Vandal. Do not train both, it's unnecessary. Train and play with the one you always pick in ranked. The third gun is Sheriff. I think playing some DMs with the Sheriff can be really useful to improve your strafes, because the Sheriff causes you to move after you have shooted, and it also improves your first bullet accuracy. 70 to 90% of your deathmatches you need to play with your primary rifle. Playing with Sheriff is hard, and if you're not able to kill anyone and just getting destroyed, then you aren't really able to train with it. The fourth and last gun is Operator. Yes, you heard me well. Operator is a gun that, again, just in some DMs you can play and train with. What people miss, and why the majority of players are mad when someone plays Operator, is that those players always just sit and wait. Instead, you should be playing the Operator almost as if you were playing a Vandal. Obviously, holding sometimes is more than needed, and it's also a skill. But clearing and picking enemies is what actually gonna make you better. Alright, let me pull all of this together so you actually know what to do when you queue up your next DM. What I do in every deathmatch I play is the same thing every time. I pick a hot zone, my back is covered by geometry, I pick one mechanic that I'm consciously focused on for that DM, I'm playing my primary rifle for almost the whole session, and every fight I take, I'm taking it because I'm ready for it. Meaning my crosshair is already where it needs to be where the duel starts. If you're at gold or plat or ascendant, here's the version of that routine I want you to run instead, because if you copy mine directly, the mechanics aren't there yet to support it. For the next 10 DMs, start with crosshair placement at head level. That's the foundation. Don't worry about the other 4, just head level of the wall. Your primary rifle 100%, no Sheriff, no Operator. Pick Phantom or Vandal and commit. And the only success metric you track is, did I peek and clear like I would have in rank? Run it for 10 DMs and you will feel a difference. Run it for 100 DMs and your ranked games will feel different. If this helped, subscribe. See you in the next one.